Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online and welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be doing just a little bit of cookie decoration for the 4th of July holiday. That's my theme today, but like anything else, you can apply the techniques that I'm showing you to any kind of cookies for any time of year or any decorations in a variety of shapes and colors that you like. So what I did earlier is I baked some cookies, and this is just a simple shortbread cookie dough. I cut them out, baked them a golden brown color. They're nice and cool. We're going to decorate these cookies. I'm going to show you a few techniques that I think you'll find super helpful. For the cookie icing, we're going to be making a royal icing. So let's kind of put these aside. We'll come back and decorate these after we make our icing. So for the royal icing, I've got my sifted powdered sugar in my bowl, and I'm just going to be adding some egg whites. There are a lot of different recipes for this. You can also use a meringue powder instead of the egg whites, and those recipes, you'll sometimes see a little bit of corn syrup in them. So if you're using a basic royal icing recipe and you're not over whipping the royal icing and you may find that you're having some problems with cracking, try another recipe, see if that works for you too. And besides the royal icing recipe, you can just do a basic powdered sugar and water. I always recommend using warm water. Seems to mix in a little bit better, and then as it cools, it's going to help stabilize with the drying a little bit. So definitely try this royal icing recipe or any one that you like, and consider using powdered sugar and water for your icing too. So knowing that, let's get started. So I've got my powdered sugar. I'm going to be adding my egg whites. I've got some pasteurized egg whites that I bought. And what I do is I measure this out, but I'm keeping an eye on the consistency, and I want it to be almost like a toothpaste consistency, and then I'm going to be whipping it up. I'm going to add a little bit of clear vanilla. Keep in mind when you're doing these cookie decorations, especially if you're going to be using white or even any other colors, use a clear extract for your flavoring, whether it's vanilla or almond, rum, lemon, or orange. Make sure that you're not tinting this icing at all, because this is a base and it could throw your colors off. So knowing all that, let's get started. I've got some egg whites here and we're going to be pouring them in. And I'm mindful of my consistency. The egg whites are kind of going into the bottom of the bowl, so give them a chance to mix in before you add any more, because it's just a lot easier to add a little bit of egg white than a little bit of powdered sugar. This is looking really good. I might add a little bit more whites. We're going to see how this looks when it's mixed together. Okay. It's a little on the thick side, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more egg white. Like I said, you don't want to add too much, especially in my case because my powdered sugar's in the next room. Okay, so this is a really nice consistency. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. And I'm going to go ahead and add my flavoring right now, which I'm just using clear vanilla. That's just going to add a little bit of flavoring to this icing. If you're having a hard time with your icing setting up, maybe you live in a humid climate, try adding a little bit of crema tartar to this mixture. That's going to help it a lot. Be careful not to add too much. It's going to add kind of a tangy flavor, but definitely try that if you're having any trouble with some drying. So we're going to leave this whip until it turns lighter in color. It's going to aerate. I'm using the paddle attachment because I feel that the whip is going to add more air into the mixture, and it might create some excessive bubbles in my icing, especially when I'm piping. I don't want to see any bubbles. It's going to kind of make it look not smooth, and especially for the inside of the cookie, which is called the flood. So when the icing is ready, what we're going to do is we're going to outline the cookies with the icing, and then we're going to thin down some of the icing, and we're going to be using that for flooding the inside of the cookie. That's how we're going to get that very smooth colored finish or white finish, whatever color that we're using. So we're going to keep whipping this. It's almost ready to go. And please let me know if you have any questions. And definitely if you're planning on doing any cookie decorating for the holiday. So I turn this up a little bit. We're gonna let it get lighter in color. It's still a little creamy looking. We want a little bit more whiteness to it. And most definitely you want it to hold its shape. You don't want it too thick because we're kind of drawing some thin lines, but it's got to hold its shape because we're going to be flooding the inside of the cookie, and it's got to hold that liquid icing in. So no worries, just kind of let it work on its own, and please let me know if you have any questions, okay? For our coloring, I'm going to be using my Chef Master Liquid Gel colors. These are going to work very well. They'll probably work better than just a regular liquid food coloring, but if that's all that you have access to, that's fine. Consider that when you're making your icing, you might want to make it a little bit thicker because you're adding a little bit of liquid coloring rather than these pastes, which are very concentrated. So this is a liquid gel, and you can also buy a paste in a jar, which is even thicker. So keep that in mind when you're making your icing, what you're using for your coloring. How much you're using is really going to affect the consistency. When you get into like the deeper reds and the darker blues and greens, that's going to require more coloring. So keep all of that in mind. It's a process of elimination and experimentation with a lot of your baking. So definitely have fun with your cookie decorating. Okay, so our icing, as you can see, is looking really good. It's getting lighter in color. It looks like it's holding its shape very well. We're going to let it go just a little bit longer, and then we're going to do some piping. And I've got some cookies that I made last night that are almost dry, so you'll like those too. So of course our theme today is red, white, and blue, but you can use this technique for a variety of cookies. You can make like a watermelon cookie for the summertime, and just so many things. You can do wedding shaped, cake shaped cookies for favors for weddings, and just let me know if you need any suggestions on cookies or cookie decorating. I'd be happy to help you. This is looking great. Okay, it's a really nice consistency. It's holding its shape very well, not too thick. It's going to be easy for me to pipe. We're going to go ahead and take this off the mixer. So keeping in mind this is royal icing, and royal icing is always going to dry very hard. So when you're working on this for any length of time, you're going to want to cover your bowl with a towel. So let's go ahead and take this off the mixer, and we will be ready to start our cookie decorating. Please let me know if you have any questions, and perhaps if you've done any cookie decorating so far. I'd really like to hear about it and definitely see some pictures. Okay, so this is just a perfect consistency, and I see we have a question. Oh, okay. Yeah, in case you can't see the icing, I'm just kind of scraping down my bowl a little bit to make sure everything's okay. And I'm just going to hold some icing up. This is just a perfect consistency. It's holding its shape, not too thick, not too dry. It's going to be easy to pipe. Keep in mind, if for some reason it's too thick or too thin, just go ahead, put it back on the mixer and make the adjustments. It happens. Just make sure that your icing is the right consistency before you begin, then you won't have to start over. So it's holding its shape nicely. So let's go ahead and fill one of our pastry bags with just this white icing. Okay. So what you can do is you can use a disposable bag with a coupler or a paper bag. I like to use paper bags. I'm just always fond of them. I've always used them. I just keep some parchment sheets and I just kind of make my cone like this. So I like the paper bags because they don't get slippery. I feel like I have a better grip on them, but really it's personal preference. So what I do is I cut off my end, and then I just insert my tip. So I'm just going to be using a plain round tip. This is a Wilton number 5, just in case you're wondering. And Echo makes tips too, but they're different numbers. But this is a good resource if you're wondering what size tip. So we've got our tip in the bag. And I'm just going to be filling my bag a little bit. Don't fill this too full because you're making fine lines. It's a fine tip, and then it's going to be a little hard to squeeze out. Okay, so I've got a good amount in here. And I'm just going to press to see if my tip goes through. And what I'm going to do is cut a little bit more off the end here. And that'll allow my tip to come through. I always go a little shorter in the beginning, and then I can always cut a little extra off if I need to. So, whoops, excuse me. So this tip is just a little too close to the end. And what I'm going to do is just trim it off. I just kind of pushed it in a little bit. Okay, so then I have my paper bag, and my icing is ready to go. I'm kind of having a little hard time with this end here. I didn't cut it real well in the beginning, so it's not so clean for me, but we're going to fix it. Just kind of work at it, anything that comes up. Okay, so my tip is out, and Chef Susie has her paper bag that she likes to use. Okay, so now let's go ahead and color a little bit of this icing. I'm just going to be using some blue coloring, and we're going to do is just make some blue royal icing. Like I said, you're going to want to keep this covered with a damp towel. Definitely a damp towel rather than plastic wrap. It's going to work a lot better for you. So let's go ahead and push this out of the way, and we'll get our mixing bowl over here. And we'll have a little bit more room to work. Okay, so I'm using my liquid paste color, and I'm going to make like kind of a light blue, not too dark, kind of like maybe we'll call it a medium blue. So we'll use this for some of the piping on our cookies. Okay, this is the perfect color. So that was easy. The icing is nice and smooth. It's not too thick. It's really easy to mix in. And please let me know if you have any questions so you could see the consistency as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fill another paper bag. Perhaps maybe I'll put a star tip in this one for the 4th of July holiday. So you're going to have maybe some stars, some stripes, some red, white, and blue. Okay, so I'm just folding my bag around, cutting off my end. And you can also use your canvas bags, whatever kind of bag that you like that you're more comfortable with. Like I said, I'm used to using paper because I always used it in the pastry kitchen, so it's just more comfortable for me. Okay, so we'll cut this one off a little bit. It's a nice thing about paper, you can keep trimming it off. And please let me know if I can answer any questions that you have. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of blue in here. We got a little bit of blue icing for some decoration. Okay, so now we've got a white bag and a blue bag going. Perfect. Nice star. Okay, so what we're going to do with the rest of the blue is we're going to thin this down with a little bit of water, and we're going to use this for the flood. So we need just a little bit more. Then we'll be adding some water and then a little bit more blue. What I usually do when I'm making my icing for the flood, I'll add my water first and then I'll finish it up with a little more coloring. Seems to give me a little bit more control. So I'm just adding a little bit of water at a time. You can add some more icing if you need to, if this gets too thin. You want this to be kind of a thick, syrupy consistency. So you might have to add a little bit more icing here. So I always recommend making a little bit extra than what you need for your cookies if you're not sure, because it's a lot easier just to have a little bit extra than to actually recolor the icing and try to match it, especially if you're working on like a special project, like maybe a favor for a wedding or a shower or something. Just go ahead and make some extra icing. And especially when you're mixing, this is just a primary color, but when you start mixing like oranges and things like that, you just want your color to be consistent. So for the flood, we are going to be putting the icing in a squirt bottle. You can pipe this if you like, but it's a lot easier to use one of those plastic squeeze bottles. So my icing is a really good consistency. It's kind of like a thick syrup. When in doubt, make it a little bit thicker, because if it gets too thin, it's going to be hard to keep it within the lines of the cookie. So now it's like the perfect consistency, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust my coloring. I want this one to be just a little bit darker. I'm just going to be adding some more of the paste. Okay, perfect. So we're just going to be putting this in the squeeze bottle, and it's going to be ready to go for our flood for our cookies when we need it. I like using these little plastic deli containers because you can kind of just like squeeze it if you don't have a funnel. It makes pouring in a lot easier. They clean up really well. You can rinse them, put them in your dishwasher if you need to. Okay, so we've got a little bit of blue for our flood. We're going to go ahead and set that aside. Okay, are we having any questions so far? Okay, so what's nice about these squeeze bottles with the cap, with the cover, can keep it from getting dried out. But definitely, if you've made some icing for your flood, you're not going to be using it for a while, definitely wash the top of your squeeze bottle. Otherwise, your royal icing is going to dry in there, and it's just going to make it a little difficult. So let's go ahead and make a little bit of white for the flood. So really, when you're doing your cookie decoration with your icing, it's really which takes the most time is coloring your icing and preparing it. Once this is ready to go, things go pretty fast. So go ahead and make a little bit more icing for the flood. So is everyone understanding this part? So I've got a little bit of warm water, and I add a little bit at a time. And you just take your time. This is the foundation, just like baking the cookies. So speaking of baking the cookies, I just used a shortbread recipe with some bread flour and some cake flour, a little bit of butter and some sugar and some vanilla and salt and some egg yolks. And there aren't any leaveners in the short dough, and typically you won't see that. And it's just a nice, crisp, buttery cookie. So for the short dough cookies, if you're looking for a really clean edge on your cookie, make sure that you refrigerate them well after you roll them, cut them out, let them cool off really good before you put them in the oven, and that's going to help with the spreading, and that's going to help give you a kind of a crisper edge on that cookie. Definitely when you're doing cookie decorations, I always recommend making the cookies just a little bit thicker. They're easier to move around, and the chances of breakage are a little bit lower. So we have a nice consistency, but it's just looking a little too thin to me. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more royal icing. Just make sure that you make your icing right in the beginning. Okay, so back to the cookies. We were talking about the cookie dough. When you're doing these cookie decorations, make sure that you make your cookies just a little bit thicker, and then moving them around is going to be a little bit easier, and especially if you're packaging them for something special, you're going to want a thicker cookie that's a little bit more stable. Okay, so our white flood is looking good. I like this consistency a lot better than it was before I added a little bit more of the royal icing. It's definitely a little bit thicker. It's going to hold a little bit better for the flood. Just make sure you get all those lumps out the best that you can. It's looking nice and smooth, and it's a thick, syrupy consistency. This is exactly what you're looking for. Like I said, when in doubt, make it a little bit thicker. Okay, so The fun part is about to start soon because we've got our preparation ready to go. And we've got our white for our flood. So these are some pretty easy colors to work with. I'm sure that as time goes on, you'll be making a little bit more complicated cookies. But for now, this is a great foundation and it's a great start. So let's get the cookies. What I like to do for my my 4th of July cookies, I'll always outline them all in white, and then I've got my white color for my foundation, and then I'm going to be flooding them with the other colors. So your outline definitely affects the cookie, so give it some thought before you make your cookie decoration. So what I'm going to be doing with this white is I'm just outlining my cookie. And this is just a basic royal icing. And then we're going to be filling it with the icing, which is the flooding technique. And please let me know if you have any questions. What you're going to want to do is keep some toothpicks on hand, because that's going to help if you need to move any of these lines, or if you need to pop any bubbles with your flooding. So I emptied my bag a little bit because I felt like I had a little bit of shaking. And be sure that your egg whites are also room temperature, because that's going to help out a lot too. So I've just got a basic outline. Now I've got some rectangle cookies that we're going to be making a flag shape with. So I just cut these with my cookie cutter, with my pizza cutter. So what we're going to do is we're going to outline the flag. And I kind of went over there a little bit, so I'm going to fill this in. Keep in mind, with your cookies, you are the only one that's going to notice the imperfection. So at some point, just leave it alone if you're having a hard time with something. Okay, so we're going to make the square for the blue with the stars, and then we're just going to make some outlines for the stripes. So this is super easy. It's just going to be a 4-stripe flag. You can kind of get as elaborate as you like. And what I like to do when I'm doing more lines is I'll move my cookies closer to me. Okay. So just make sure that you have a good line that's going to keep your flooding in. But no worries, if you have some mishaps on any of your cookies, I'm sure you'll be able to find someone to eat those. Okay, so let's go ahead and make one more flag. And you can flood your cookies almost right away. Once you do your piping, you can let it set up just a little bit. But once you do the flood, that's when you're going to want to let the icing set before you do any decorations on it, because it's got to dry. And it usually takes like maybe overnight or at least 6 hours. So you can feel it. Okay, so we're just outlining some more of our stars. So I do have a pointed star, and then I kind of have a rounded star that's a little bit softer and bigger. So definitely have fun with your different shapes and sizes on your cookies for the 4th of July. Like I said, I'm just moving these cookies closer because for me, I've got a little bit more control doing it this way. Okay, so now we've got the outline. We're going to go ahead and flood some of these cookies. And what we'll do is we'll start with maybe some blue. We'll do some blue stars. And this is where the flood comes in. And you're just going to be piping this icing. Be careful not to damage your rim. And then just fill it in a little bit. And this is where your toothpick is going to come into play, because you can use it to help fill in any of these gaps. So it's good that this is not like really runny, because you just don't want it to run out. So like I said, once we've flooded, we're going to want these cookies to set for 6 to 8 hours, even overnight. This is at room temperature, not in the refrigerator. Let's go ahead and make a blue star over here. So see how much easier these squeeze bottles make the flooding? And with the bigger ones, it's going to take a little bit of time. Don't overflood, because it can go over the rim. I've had that happen too. That's why I'm kind of leaving a little bit of gapping, and I'm just kind of pressing it in with my toothpick, some of those little empty spots. And this toothpick is great for any bubbles too that you might have. Okay, it's looking good. Okay, so the blue in the flag, we're going to be putting that in too. Okay, so since it's kind of a little spot, what I thought would be nice to do would be some little white sprinkles. Let's go ahead and get that flooding in there. And we'll put some white sprinkles, and these are going to be our stars on our flag. So easy techniques that I'm showing you today. It's really getting started and getting your icing to the right consistency and all the colors that you want. And no worries too, if a little bit of your flooding comes out, if you kind of went a little bit overboard, the cookie is still going to look nice and it's going to be delicious, and you can kind of clean it up a little bit with a paring knife once things dry. So definitely have fun. Don't be intimidated by your cookies, and don't worry about making them too perfect, because you're the only one that's going to notice if they're not. Okay, let's go ahead and do a little bit of white flooding too, and we'll be on our way. Okay, so what's nice is once you do the flooding, you can add some sprinkles to these cookies, and they're going to stick really well at this point, or you can let them dry and then just add some decorations later. So super beautiful looking cookies, and please let me know if you have any questions. I also wanted to mention too that you may want to make your white flood in the beginning, and then you can use that to make another color. Like you can make a little bit extra and then just use that extra white to make your blue flood. So keep that in mind too. Also, remember when we talked about the color wheel and the primary colors, and how yellow and red make orange and blue and yellow make green? Keep that in mind when you're making your icings, because you can start mixing your colors together. It's going to save you some time, and it'll also save you some product too. So if you're doing a yellow flood, and maybe you need an orange flood after that, just take your yellow icing and just add a little bit of red to it. Okay? All right, so let's make some of the stripes in our flag. So you can start with red on the top or the white on the top too. So when I'm flooding my cookies, I like to do the color that I'm using. Like for example, we did all the blue, now we're doing all the white, and then we'll do all the red, and we'll be ready to go. And please let me know if you have any questions. Oh, and be careful too with your toothpicks that you're not grabbing a toothpick that's got a little bit of red on it when you're doing this. Okay, so we're ready for our red flood. So we made some really super beautiful cookies here. It didn't take too long. Getting the icing ready was what took the longest. And now we're just about done. Like I said, you're going to leave these sit overnight, or at least 6 hours to dry. Then you can finish them off. Make sure if you're packaging these that you're letting them get nice and firm before you're doing that. Okay, we're going to do our last red star. And like I said, I try not to get too close to the end and kind of let it steepen a little bit, and then you can kind of help it out a little bit with your toothpick. So we'll let that one kind of work its way to the end, and then what we're going to do is we'll make our striping. So when you're doing all of one color at one time, it definitely makes things go a lot faster. And sometimes these are going to look like they're together, or they may run together. They'll be okay, don't worry, just let them dry on their own. And if they do run a little bit, then you can usually still use them. Keep in mind that you'll be the most critical, or you can definitely hand them off to some of your taste testers. Keep the tips of your bottles clean, and also keep the tips of your bag clean too. Okay, so we're finished up with our flooding. So what do you think? The cookies look great. They're nice and shiny. When they dry, they're going to be a little bit more matted. That's okay. And these are going to dry hard. And let me know if you have any questions on your cookie decoration. I've got some dried cookies that I made last night. We're going to take a look at those before we say our goodbyes. And we've got a question.
When packaging the cookies, do you suggest wrapping each cookie individually with plastic or something else?
The question is if you're wrapping these cookies, should you wrap each one in plastic? Well, if you're using them like perhaps for a gift or a favor, you're definitely going to want to wrap them individually, maybe in a nice little cellophane bag with a nice ribbon on top. But if you're just wrapping like a plate of them, once they're dry, you can just definitely put some plastic wrap over them. Keep these at room temperature. Okay, so let's take a look at some cookies that I made last night that are completely dry. I probably have just a little bit of difference in my toning and my color here. I think I might have used a little bit more red, but this is what they're going to look like when they're dry, and you can touch them, and this is a good time to decorate. So I left the flag open, so I wanted to show you the stripes, but you can definitely make this one all at once. And then we're completely done with our flooding, and it's time to do a little bit of decorating. Okay. And these are some 4th of July cookies. You can do some piping, or if you prefer just sprinkles, that's super pretty too. You can also leave your cookies just plain and flooded. So let's go ahead and do some piping with some royal icing on our cookies. Okay, so we've got our blue star royal icing. So what we can do is we can just do some dotting on our star. It's a nice incorporation of some blue for our red, white, and blue theme. And we can also do some starring and some dotting. So definitely be creative with your cookie decorating. And you really just need these 3 colors. It's super easy color combination to start with. And make sure that you keep your bags covered. Otherwise, you're going to get a little bit of dryness like I had there. Okay. Once you get this royal icing on here too, you're going to want to leave this dry pretty well. So I'm just going to be doing some more dotting. Super easy technique. And like I said, once you get your icing ready to go, and you do your decorating, you can see that it goes quite fast. So what you can also do with some of your star cookies is you can do some stars and stripes on them too. So we'll just do a little bit of striping, and then we'll add some stars, and we'll have our stars and stripes theme. So please have fun with your cookie decorating. Let me know if you have any questions or if you need any help or advice with anything. So we've got some stars and stripes on our cookie. Let's go ahead and plate these up, and then we're going to say our goodbyes. So please get your questions in. And I hope that you have a wonderful holiday weekend. Stay in touch. Let me know how you're doing with your cookies. And being careful when you're plating these. If the icing is still a little bit soft, like the ones that I did earlier, we'll put our flags on here. Maybe we'll move this one over. And these are 4th of July cookies. And have a wonderful and a safe holiday, and we'll see you next time. And be in touch. Let me know how you're doing with your cookies. Goodbye.